Hello painters and friends, welcome to my new video. This time I would like to show you the complete painting of Marilyn Monroe in a couple of minutes. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. If you want to see all the parts of the painting tutorials in detail, please visit my personal website or my Patreon, where you will find all my video tutorials that are not published anywhere else. In both cases you will support my work and I will be able to continue creating painting tutorials. Thank you very much. And the links can be found under the video. I clean all the parts and prepare them for painting. I started with white primer. I make a habit of pre-shading bust and I use dark blue and cream for this. Because Marilyn has very fair skin, I use white as the final spray. I always use three colors to mix skin tone: red, yellow and blue, and then white to lighten the result mix. Using a spray gun, I apply the skin tone to the face and left hand. Dark skin tones from the bottom up and lighten skin tones from the top down. After drying, I had to cover the left hand so I could paint the blue jacket and black sweater. For this I use liquid mask or modeling tape. I continue to prepare the jacket in the same way as the face and hand. I applied a dark blue shade from the bottom up and a light blue shade from the top down. With the airbrush, I proceeded to slowly and carefully apply the paint to the surface. Preparing the black sweater was easy by comparison. I applied black from the bottom up and grey from the top down. This shading helps me identify places that will be light and places that will be dark. I then underline these places with a subsequent oil layer to add the final effect. I started painting the face first. It is the most important part of the bust. That's why I want it done first. In this case, it was going to be a very light skin tone. I mix it with three colors again: yellow, blue and red. I use white to lighten it. I used two brushes while painting. One round one, which I used to apply the paint under the surface, and one flat brush, which I used to spread and soften the paint. This created subtle transitions between color tones. Sometimes it's necessary to dilute the paint to spread it under the surface better. I keep the flat brush dry and clean at all times. The big advantage of oil paints is that they dry slowly. This gives you time to put the colors together beautifully and to create a smoother transition. Unfortunately, you can't paint a face in one evening. The next day you always have to go back and work on it some more. This applies to all parts of the bust where you want to use oil paints. You can achieve a great contrast by using several consecutive layers, but the result is worried. You will achieve a realistic facial appearance that will be semi-gloss as opposite to completely matte, like in reality and full of life. That's why my first layer is about placing shadows and lights on the face and connecting them. Then I added warm and cold tones. I proceeded in the same way when painting the left hand, where I removed the covering layer of liquid mask. When I have the first layer of oil ready, I let the bust dry overnight and continue the next day. With another oil layer, I correct minor errors, deepen shadow if necessary, and add contrast if necessary. I can also add warm or cold tones. I just keep painting until I am happy. It can take up to 3 or 4 days to add more and more layers, filters or glazes. Everybody makes mistakes. Mistakes move us forward. They make us stronger and better. It's not bad at all to make mistakes and don't be afraid of them. I also made a few mistakes while painting, and the first was right at the beginning, painting the teeth. I use all paints as the first layer. All paints are not opaque, well, not like acrylic paints. Therefore, I had to paint the teeth with acrylic paints and only then use oil paints to give the teeth the final look. Before I moved to the next part of the face, which are the lips, I painted the whites of the eyes. I use all paint because they spread very well and apply the paint to the edges of the upper and lower lid. Before I return to the eyes, the color will dry and I will be able to continue. I use the colors I had on the palette to color the lips. It's part of the face, so I think it should be mixed with the same colors I use for the skin tone. I wanted the redder shade to show that she had applied lipstick. I painted the iris of the eyes with acrylic paints first and then added an oil layer. I paid attention to the location and size of each eye. I never use blue directly from the tube. I always add another color, a little brown or red, to dim its radiant appearance and get a shade that matches the color of the blue eyes. My next mistake was the chosen shade for blonde hair. Marilyn was not a nature blonde. Her hair was dyed, but even so, yellow does not belong in blonde hair, or not to the extent that I used for the first layer. I then had to repaint the hair with another layer. It was better, but next time I will choose a different shade of color. I probably won't find blonde color in the tube. That's why I had to mix this shade of paint. Again, the theory of color helped me, and with the help of red, yellow and blue, I mixed a shade that resembled a blonde shade. It took me several days to paint the hair. I added more and more layers, corrected and added contrast until I was quite satisfied with the result. However, I learned from my mistakes and I won't repeat them next time. The blue fly jacket is very beautifully sculpted, fine details, folds, really enjoy the paint. I again enhanced the blue color with other colors to achieve a subtle turquoise hue. I tried to lighten the color with a lot of light shades such as cream, grey or skin tones. The result is far better than using white. I'm not saying white is bad, but the result is so cold, sort of dead. However, sometimes white is suitable. With all paints, I just underlined the lights and shadows and added more contrast. I always try to make the bottom of the bust darker than at the shoulders. It is the principle of light falling from above. The first day I applied the base shade, lights and shadows, and the next day I just fixed the mistakes, added more contrast and finished the jacket. Next I could go for the black part of the bust. Yes, the bust has a black sweater and black collar. That's why I want to choose two different black colors. For the black sweater, I choose a smaller black, where I also use blue. I painted the color with warm black, where I mix a little brown. When I paint black, I use a lot of gray as a base, and I keep them black color for the deep shadows. I started with the sweater, where I painted the first layer of oil, placed the lights and shadows, and let everything dry. During drying, I started working on the color. With acrylic paints, I make a sketch of where lights and shadows would appear, just roughly. It is not a smooth surface, so there is no need for smooth transitions. Subsequently, I shaded the color with oil paints. The next day, I did a second layer for the sweater and the color and finished both black parts on the bust. I was satisfied with the result because I achieved two different black colors. The last thing on the bust was the emblem of an Air Force serving in Korea. I was wondering how to paint it because I can't paint with a pencil. It was mainly about the shape and location of the mosquito. I could handle the rest. In the end, I came up with printing the badge at the right size and making a template. I put it on the jacket and transferred the mosquito with the color to the circle of the badge. It was enough to transfer the road, shape and location. I painted the rest with a brush. I painted according to a model I found on the internet. When I made a mistake, I used blue color to paint the background, corrected the mistake and continued. It's a simple trick of how to transfer the size, shape and location of the base image anywhere on the bust. The remaining little things are easy to paint. And that concluded the painting of the bust. I really enjoyed painting and despite of your mistakes, I am satisfied with the result. Thank you for your time and for watching this short video.